This channel is for educational purposes only. Please do your own due diligence before making any investment decisions. Hi, this is Joe Rabil with Invest Like a Pro, and today I'm going to give you a stock market update. I want to go through this spider and give you an idea of what I think is going on. We've reached a pretty critical point here, and I think there's several things that we need to take a look at to determine where we go from here. We've had a pretty strong rally. Now the question is, do we fail here like a lot of people are thinking, or have we started a bull market like a lot of other people are thinking? I want to show you how you don't need to make a big market call to be able to make money. And I think the more you get away from making big market calls, the better off you're going to be in your individual investing. So let's go ahead and get into the S&P. And so we'll just start out with the monthly chart because we've been talking about this over and over again. And one of the things that I've brought up is this 18-month line and the fact that we're back to it now. We touched it already this month, but it has a rising slope and it has a rising 40 underneath. So essentially, this trend is not down, it's up still. We still have a rising 18-month line, but it's at it and we're coming from underneath. So I think there's some resistance. The other thing is if you put the fib grid up, we're basically about the 50% retracement of the move. The other thing that's negative about this chart mostly has to do with the MACD lines going the opposite direction. Price is rallying in this direction, and we've got the MACD, both MACD lines going downward. So, I mean, I think that sets up the potential for more sideways action on this time frame. But based on the shorter term momentum signs, we might push a little bit higher before we start to see that pattern develop. So I think the weekly, as always, is kind of the most critical time frame. But I want to zero in this week because there's a lot of interesting things that have developed here. Number one, I have this dotted line. That was the initial accelerated downtrend line that we broke. So when you make a lower high here and a lower low here, you can draw an accelerated trend line. You started with this trend line, but then you can accelerate it down when you make a new lower high and a new lower low. That's what I like to do. And the reason is because I want the most aggressive trend line I can get because I'm looking to create a 1, 2, 3 reversal. Now, even though we use this aggressive trend line, if you notice, we only have the 1. We've only broken the downtrend line. We don't have a 2 or a 3. The 2 or the 3 could develop now that this is cupping around. It's very possible that it could pull back to the 18 and then turn back up through. And that would coincide with the break of this other trend line. See, that's one way this could develop. The other way it could develop is we go ahead and break the downtrend line. We break through the 40. We break through the 18-month. We get up into this resistance zone a little bit higher, maybe 4,400, maybe even a little bit higher than that. And then we start up some form of a consolidation or a pullback. By the time that happens, this 18 is going to be rising. And I think, it's still looking for... In either case, I'd probably be watching for a pullback and uphook around the 18, I think is the most ideal next entry point. Now, one of the things that I wanted to make sure I covered today is, well, first of all, before I leave the weekly, this was a strong ADX reading here. I mean, down move and a strong ADX reading. And there are times where ADX is going to lag, and there are times when ADX could give us the wrong implication, meaning this looked like a really strong decline, but in reality, it could be more like a climax low, just like what happened back here, and really what happened here, where we had a pretty strong reading and then it just reversed. The reason why I really wasn't thinking that was how this was going to play out is because this was just a straight down move and this is a straight up move. That's a V bottom reversal. This was a flush to the downside and then a move back up. This was a trend to the downside. And typically, when you change the trend, you don't just have a vertical move back up and V bottom out of it. So I'm still inclined to believe that there's more work to be done here. But what could take place is that we could end up forming like a trading range here, rather than either going straight up or failing and going straight down. I mean, there's a lot of guys that love to make big market calls, and it's really binary. They're like, oh, sell everything right here, and the market's getting ready to get killed again, just like in 2008. I don't know how many, if you guys are on Twitter or whatever. I got on Twitter recently. I can't believe how many times I've seen the 2008 chart compared to what's happening now. I'm not a big believer in that. There's, there's so many differences between now and back then that to try and overlay and say, oh, the timing is exactly the same and we're going to fail right here just like we did before. I mean, I don't know. I just don't do it. It's not something that I've spent any time. Well, I used to do it, and I found that it really isn't useful. So anyway, that's just my 2 cents on that. So anyway, there's a lot of guys out there that are very bullish based on how strong this has gone. And then there's a lot of guys that are bearish again because of how this looks more like, a failed rally. And it could be either one of those things. But if we focus on the immediate momentum, that's here on the daily chart, I think this is going to tell us a lot because we know we're at a pretty critical point right here. We're hitting in some pretty key levels, anywhere from 4,300 up to 4,400, 440, 430 to 440 area on the spider, or 4,300 to 4,400 on the S&P. So we know that is the case. The question is, how is it going to react here? Right now, we've got confirmation on green DI. We have confirmation on ADX. We have confirmation on MACD. And while it's possible, this could just plummet and just fall apart, and all of these could drop on a dime. I'm not saying that can't happen. I'm saying I play the odds. I'm a probabilities guy, and the probabilities are that, yeah, this could pull back, but then we're probably going up again based on this confirmation and this confirmation. And then what we're looking for is when we go to a new high, and the first thing that's going to show is green DI is going to die off. Green DI will be the first thing to kind of not confirm. Okay, you're going to see that this start to sort of dwindle. The other thing that I think we'll see is a red DI getting over 15. I mean, when the sellers can't get the red DI line over 15, you're in a very weak selling environment. The sellers are incredibly weak right now. So that's another thing to kind of keep an eye on. But as we always look for, we're looking for a contraction phase to develop in these two lines. That's really the signal that we're on the lookout for. And then we know these are going to come together. This line is going to turn over, and this is going to go through some kind of a correction or a consolidation pattern. So I'm kind of saying the same thing that I did last week, which is the trend is up, and until we see signs that the momentum is slowing, I don't think I would be aggressively looking to be a short seller for sure. And I would definitely be scaling out of positions that I've taken for like short-term trades. I'd be taking profits in those. But when it comes to how this plays out from here, we're not going to really know until we see the reaction at the 200-day. That's the 40-week. This downtrend line, this 18-month. We need to see the reaction. Okay, I mean, once we see that reaction, once we see the momentum die down, or does it just keep pushing through? Because if this thing just keeps driving through to the upside, then we could very well just turn into a big trading range. I mean, it's possible we could pull one of these, but that's kind of like the last thing in my head. But I did want to show one other thing. You see the strength of the daily ADX. You see how this is the first time we've really driven this thing to the upside. But I want to give you an example. Look at what's going on Train Technologies. This is a big industrial stock, and we're rallying up towards the 18-month. I mean, you see how ugly this pattern is. We got a big drop, and now we're rallying up to the 18-month line, and the weekly was in a downtrend, and then we got through the 18-week, and we're getting a really good look at the strength of this rally. Look at this ADX pattern. Look at how powerful that is. You see how it's getting above all these red peaks? Every one of these red peaks is exceeded that through this whole decline phase, even back in here. So this is the strongest move, directional move, that this stock has made, dating back really on this whole screen, going all the way back to the early part of 2021. So I'm using that as a daily to register these signals, right? And it's telling us how strong each one of these legs are, essentially. And this is the strongest leg we've had. I mean, this is not likely. It's, again, the probabilities thing. Is it possible? It's possible we could do that. The probabilities are very unlikely that these lows are going to be broken right now. And when I say right now, that means we could come down and then we could go up. We could do this. We could consolidate and then maybe later on take on these lows and break them. But to turn on a dime and expect this to fall right through that, I think is really unlikely. You got to get that out of your heads. Anyone who's really, really bearish here, you got to be very careful with what you're doing, because I don't think the likelihood is that we can just fall apart from this type of pattern. I went through and looked at a bunch of stocks. I actually ran a screen, and if you guys can do this, run this screen. So on TC2000, it lets you do a new low. Sometime in the last 100 days, we've made a new low. Okay? And then I want green DI above 30 and ADX above 30. So that means the buyers are strong. And I know I've made a new low. So what is that? What does that mean? We've gone to a new low and now we're showing really strong buying. That's a reversal. It's a pattern that says we basically were going down, but now buyers have really stepped in. I couldn't believe how many stocks there were. I had to put in a volume filter to get the list down. But there are so many stocks doing this right now. It's unbelievable. I couldn't believe how many stocks had this type of pattern where it's just an uninterrupted straight up move, no selling along the way. I mean, the sellers on this are at 6. And so anyway, I just think that's relevant to this whole discussion of, is this 2008 all over again? Now, I know I'm kind of diminishing what I'm calling as risk. I think there's risk here. We've rallied up for several weeks in a row. I mean, this isn't a great entry. If you're looking to be a buyer, I don't think this is a good entry. But I think the idea that I would have in my head, unless proven otherwise, I would be thinking pull back and then we turn up again. And how strong is that next up move? I don't know. I mean, maybe it's not quite as strong and we start to lose some momentum and consolidate. But to think that this move, this drive to the upside, is just going to turn into a free fall to the downside, that one I'd have out of my head. Now, is it possible we'll push up higher than I'm actually thinking? Because I'm actually thinking 4,400 is kind of like a peak area. I think we could get there, but that's probably like the peak for this move. And then we pull back and we see how strong the selling is. If the selling is under control, then you want to look to be buying the best looking pattern. So I wanted to make sure I covered that. Now, I haven't even talked about the hourly yet, but I am going to focus in on this for a second, just because we've made all of these repetitive signals. This is a opposing trend, opposing trend, opposing trend, opposing trend signals where the daily was turning up, and there were actually pinch plays on the daily, and we kept on getting these opposing trend signals. And now we're trying to kind of do it again. But the problem is we've already broken out. We've already broken out here, and we've given 2 of these signals after the breakout. So, as I've said in the past, once I get 2 of these after the breakout, I'm more inclined to believe that we start going through some kind of a more complex corrective pattern. So I think we need to be on the lookout for that, because it's on a short-term basis, this is a pretty mature trend. The fact that the ADX is so strong tells us we don't want to get too aggressive on the sell side yet, and look to be, and really what we're trying to focus in on right now actually is, can the sellers sort of really kick in? We need to see real strength in the sellers on this way down, if we get that to show up, when it shows up. I mean, sellers are going to show up at some point. I'm not sure where it's going to be. It might be up at 440 or something like that. But when they show up, we need to see how strong they register. And as long as this ADX is strong like this, you don't want to be in a big hurry. Remember, we're in an uptrend on the daily chart. We have rising moving averages. We can't just fail here. I mean, we could, but I'm saying that's the lowest probability. The way this has got to turn is going to have to break the trend and then rally up and fail and then turn down. That's how we're going to have to reverse this pattern on this time frame. And it's gone up too long, and it's got higher highs and higher lows, and it's got rising, both moving averages rising. So don't expect this to fall apart really quickly. It's going to take a little bit of time. All right, that's the update for the week. Go ahead and post any questions or comments. Thanks.